Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Rolling with the Punches. Today, we're going to go all the way back to Florida and talk to someone. I'm not going to introduce him yet. I'm going to introduce our two co-hosts. We have David Contreras out there in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we have Dave Trujillo in Temecula, California. I messed up last time. I introduced Dave both in Florida and Temecula, so this time I had to really make sure I knew what I was doing. But Dave Contreras, I'm going to let you introduce our next guest because you guys have a close relationship here, uh, neighbors, and he has a tremendous and interesting story. We're going to go back all the way and talk a little bit of early Mike Tyson, so Muhammad Ali, some of the 80s fights, 70 fights, and man, introduce him, Dave.
Perfect. Hey, once again, Paul, we want to welcome you to our show. Today we have a special guest, Paul Mangiamele. And before he actually tells us his story, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Paul Mangiamele is the CEO of Bennigan's Restaurants. Bennigan's Restaurants, it's an international restaurant firm. They're here, they're in Mexico, they're in Spain, in different parts of the world. And if you've ever had one of their famous drinks, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's an excellent restaurant chain here in the United States, and like I said, throughout the world. But Paul not only is the CEO of this famous, very well-respected restaurant, Bennigan's, but he's also a former Marine. And here on our show, Paul, we have the utmost respect for anybody that served in our armed services. To us, you and everybody that served in our armed services, you're our heroes. Thank you very much for your service. But there's also something very interesting about Paul. He'll talk about it shortly. He, in the 1972 Olympics, he was an alternate at the 168. At the 1972 Olympics, he was an alternate fighter to fight at the Olympics at the weight of 168. And he got a chance to work with some outstanding people during that time and before. But I'm going to let him tell the story. Paul, it's an honor to have you here with us. Without further ado, we have Paul Mangiamele. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, Paul. Thank you.
David, I should just let you keep going. It's better coming from you. I feel like I'm in the ring and you're introducing me. I want to know who's in the other corner. But anyway, hey, it's a pleasure, and it's great to not only call you a friend, but a neighbor as well. So I thought about this when we talked about it, and it's interesting because I had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with Customato. And for most people will probably know the name, but for those that don't, Customato, in my opinion, was the greatest boxing coach, trainer that ever lived in the sport of boxing, because he didn't just work the art of boxing, he worked the mind of boxing, and that's a very important part. A lot of people know, that he coached Mike Tyson. A lot of people probably know that he coached Floyd Patterson, and he also coached José Torres. But you know what not really talked about a lot is all the kids like me that he trained in his gym. Now, I was lucky enough to still be able to train in New York City in the 14th Street gym, the Gramercy gym that he owned, and every day it's kind of like your place, Coach, where this place was amazing. It's no longer there. They knocked it all down and they built a hospital there, but you'd have to go up like 4 flights of stairs. And it was the longest walk ever because you knew you were going to have to spar when you get to the top of the stairs, and when you're a kid and you're sparring, of course, your opponent is usually about 8 foot tall and 300 pounds. Even if you're fighting a lightweight, your mind just plays tricks on you. And as you walk up, you'd hear people jumping rope, you hear people hitting the bags, you hear the bell going off, and it just gets you so excited to come up to the gym. And there was not just amateurs, but mostly pros. And Cuss would, be there and he welcomed you. And then later on, we went upstate to Catskill, which was probably made famous by Mike Tyson, where, Cuss had a had a house up there, beautiful Victorian house with Camille Ewald, which was it was his wife, but they never really formally announced that they were husband and wife because they wanted a distance and tax. And Cuss was very, very superstitious that way, so he kept everything separate. But in this house, there was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 different bedrooms, huge. And he would take all the kids up there, some pros. And, he also had a really good friend in this guy called Jimmy Jacobs. And so, at any one time, there'll be, 5 kids, 10 kids, a couple of pros. Everybody would always come up there and visit. But it was something where, like I said in the beginning, it wasn't just, my great experience with Cuss. It was all the kids that he came, no matter what level of boxing skills you had. Some were just trouble kids. Mike Tyson was a trouble kid. And he'd give you a place to, let off some steam. And he would always tell you that no matter how horrible or phenomenal you were, he'd always say, if you have the will and you have the desire and you have the discipline, you can make something of yourself. And so back to what you said, David, owning Bennigan's now and Steak and Ale, Bennigan's on the Fly, gave me a chance to take the discipline that Cuss taught me and apply it to what I call business athlete. It's the same thing. You still got to train. You still got to train your mind. You still got to work hard, and you still got to apply the discipline and the skill set in order to manage your people, manage your business, take care of your customers. And it's amazing that the lessons that Cuss taught me when I was just a teenager are the very lessons that I apply every single day to my teams. And we give thousands of kids an opportunity to join, the restaurant industry where, we train them in a skill. And nobody ever forgets their restaurant job. No matter who you are, you always remember your restaurant job. Yeah. But what Cuss did was, my going all the way back, and this is when my father was growing up on the east side of New York City. His neighbor was Rocky Graziano, not Marciano, Graziano. And he was a middleweight. And so my father fought in the Gramercy gym. My uncle, who was about 10 years younger than my father, he trained in the Gramercy gym. And so when it was my turn, he brought me around to the gym, and so my uncle and my father said, well, we'd like you to train Paulie, because that was what they called me. All New York, all the Italians, everybody has an I or a Y at the end of their name. So I became Paulie. And he says, okay. So what Cuss did, I had been training and running, skipping rope, and trying to get ready for my audition.
Hey, Paul, how old were you at that time?
I was almost 18 years old at the time.
Oh, so you were older then? Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I was always fighting, but not in the gym and not with Cuss. Because my father taught me, my uncle taught me. So we were always, there were street fights and all the crazy stuff that you do on the streets. Mm-hmm. But in the gym, because I wanted to go to the 1972 Olympics, that was my goal. Mm-hmm. I had seen Muhammad Ali win. I had seen Floyd Patterson win. These guys became my idols. I loved all the boxing. The Gillette, I don't know if you guys are even old enough to remember the Gillette series, where you would watch, it was a bum of the week.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it'd be on TV and all black and white. And it was just, my father and I would watch it together every week. And so, but I really wanted to go to the Olympics. And in high school, I did track and field, and I loved it. And I was pretty good at it. But I really liked boxing because, the skill set of being fast enough to hit and not get hit, and move your head in the peekaboo style and do some bobbing and weaving is really an art. Be able to time the punch, and it's just an amazing thing. I don't want to get too technical, but the beauty of having somebody miss you and you come back punching, or to get inside, or what Cuss taught was to hit and then move to the side. And he always would say to me that if you're on a railroad track and all you do is move backwards, you're still going to get run over. Learn how to get off the track. Learn to get to the side.
Yeah.
Move to the side so you don't get hit. Anybody can move backwards, but the really good fighters punch and slip. move to the side, punch and slip. And sometimes it's a punch. We had all numbers that we would use, and we had stationary bags with numbers on it, and it was called the Wooly. And we would hit the Wooly, and Cuss would have tapes of all the different numbers that he made himself, and he would say, like a 7 was a jab, and a 2 and a 3 were left and right hooks, and a 3 and 4 were left and right uppercuts, and then a 5 and a 6 were body punches to the liver and to the side, and then an 8 was a body jab that you would move to the side on. And so he would call out numbers, and in the beginning it'd be very slow. So it's a 7 7 2 3, 7 7 1 2, 7 7 4 8, and then you just go bam bam bam, and then all of a sudden you go brum 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 as you call out the numbers. So you could punch in the combinations 3 4 5. And if you remember Floyd Patterson, he did it beautifully. He would move to the inside and throw 7 or 8 punches in his prime, and get out and never get hit. He was an amazing boxer. And something about Floyd Patterson, he was a lightweight. I mean, a middleweight. And Cuss said, "You know what I did to make him a heavyweight? Can you guess what he did? He put rolls of quarters in his pocket and make him get on the scale, because he was walking around weight. He was probably 170, 175.
Wow.
And so to make him heavier and to put some intimidation on his opponent, he would put rolls of quarters. If you ever go back to see the weigh-ins, he had on all his clothes. He had on his pants. Today, everybody's in their underwear and doing muscle shots.
Yeah.
He got on the scale with his shoes, his socks, his pants, his overcoat, and rolls of quarters in his pockets. Is the funniest thing ever. And a lot of people don't know that story. But anyway, so when I was introduced to Cuss formally, he said, "Okay, get in the ring, and I'll have you spar and go a couple of rounds with this guy." So the guy was a 4-rounder pro. And here I am, I'm an amateur wanting to go to the Olympics, right? And so Cuss would always try to say, he never wanted you to get him with somebody that was so much better than you that he'll make you quit, because you just get discouraged. So he had me go in with this guy. We moved around for about 3 4 rounds. He said, "Okay, time, get out." And you never know how you did. We were moving around. He wasn't trying to knock me out. I wasn't trying to knock him out. He just wanted to see my footwork, my reflexes. And he said, "Okay, you can train." And then he told me the same thing. He said, "But I'm going to tell you something, Paulie. I train your father. I train your uncle. And if you're going to train with me, you got to do what I say. You got to listen to my instructions. And you got to have discipline. And you're going to have to train as much as I tell you to train. You got to give your heart and your soul and your mind to boxing. Are you ready to do that?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I sure am." And he became the grandfather I never had. He took me under his wing. I stayed with him. I lived with him up in with all the kids up in Catskill. And, it was free. You never paid for it, but, for the kids that he really wanted to train. The pros paid him. But what you had to do is chores. You had to go around the house. You got to paint. You got to clean the dishes. You got to help Camellia around the house. You got to vacuum. He made you earn your keep. And it was, like I said, it was an amazing thing. And it wasn't just me. It was a lot of other young men. Teddy Atlas, who went on to become a coach and a commentator on TV. He trained, but this was way after me. He trained with Cuss, but he couldn't. He got hurt and he couldn't continue on. But he was a Cuss fan, and so Cuss took him under his wing and taught him how to coach. And so from that standpoint, Cuss taught me, it's funny too, because this is back in the AAU days. And so he would have me in tournaments as I got better and better. We would go to tournaments. And so he said, "Okay, today your name is Joe Caruso. All right. And over here, your name is Paul Mangiamele. We're going to do that because we're going to fight in New York. And then we're going to fight at another time. And you're going to be Johnny Rotunda. Okay. And so that's your name. And I have to sign in that way. Because, back in those days, there were smokers, too, where, you couldn't make any money. So they give you some kind of a trinket and then you cash it in. And it's, this is old school kind of stuff, right? You guys remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of interesting. So we just go to this private thing, and the ring was set up, and there'd be a bunch of guys sitting around. And,
Microphone.
Your
Can you hear it?
microphone.
Yeah.
Let's see.
There you
Is
go.
this better? Okay, yeah, I had a call
Yeah.
come in. Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
All right.
So anyway, we went to Smokers. I went to different tournaments, but the whole thing was trying to get qualified to go to the trials, the Olympic trials. And the guy to beat me for the spot was Marvin Johnson. Do you remember him? Lightweight champion, the light heavyweight champion. So he went on, and it was an interesting, because we were in a locker room, and Cuss would stay with you and talk to you. And, you're nervous as hell. You're walking around, you're shadow boxing, you're working up a sweat. And this guy, Marvin, was talking all kinds of trash to me. He goes, you know what? I'm going to mess you up. I'm not going to use foul language on the podcast, but let's say it wasn't the friendliest of dressing rooms before you came out to fight. But he went on to, I think he got a bronze medal from the 72 Olympics. And then I stayed in for a little while, and then we went out to see this guy that you might have heard of called Muhammad Ali. We went out. At that time, he had a camp out in Pennsylvania called Deer Lake, and it was a really cool thing. So we drove out. There was two pros that went with me. That I was the designated driver. I was always driving, and every time I put my arm up on the thing, Cuss would take my arm out and said, 2 hands on the wheel, pay attention, focus. It was the funniest thing. But anyway, we drove out from upstate New York. We drove to Pennsylvania, and we pulled into Muhammad Ali's camp. And everything was a log cabin. It was very rustic, but it's beautiful. It was all brand new. And he had all these boulders, and he had all the names of the champions, heavyweight champions, light heavyweight champions, the middleweight champions. It was the coolest thing. And we came into the cabin, and Cuss introduced me to Muhammad Ali, and he said, I think I saw you boxing. I said, are you kidding me? He said, yeah, aren't you boxing the oranges down at the Safeway, down the street, the grocery store? And so that was my introduction to Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
And then he got in the ring with me and threw some punches. But I got to tell you something. You hear a lot of the conversation about Muhammad Ali when he was Cassius Clay and draft dodger and then later in his life. But little did I know as a teenager that he was going to be such an icon. And here I'm sitting with Muhammad Ali. I'm sitting with Cus D'Amato, Angelo Dundee, Bundini Brown, and a couple of other, professional fighters sitting at the table.
Wow.
It was a big, long table where we're all eating dinner or lunch, and everybody's kidding around and talking their smack but I got to tell you, I was one of the few white guys sitting at that table, and Muhammad Ali and everybody else, there was no color. You're a fighter, and there was respect because of that. Because anybody who gets in the ring, I don't care if you're an amateur, pro, or you only fought one round in your life, you got to have balls to get in that ring.
Mm-hmm.
To step through those ropes, you got to have balls because you have no idea what's going to happen. And not like tennis or baseball where you miss a shot or a golf ball, you're going to get hurt. You can get hit.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids got, damaged. And if you don't know what you're doing and how to protect yourself and how to move around. So sitting at that table, I talk to my brother about it all the time now, saying, I had no idea how historical. I wish I had movies of it. We have pictures and some video that my father took when he came up to visit me when I was getting ready for the Golden Gloves and the trials for the Olympics. But I got to tell you, man, there's not a day that goes by where I don't think about that, and I don't have the deepest love and affection for Muhammad Ali. He was a great guy, man. He was just a fabulous human being. Fabulous human being.
So what do you think? What do you think of now? He has a grandson that just made his debut about a month ago, and watching his fight, man, he has a tremendous amount of his grandfather's mannerisms in the ring. It was amazing. It's just, I think he's going to be something special. For Top Rank to pick him up already, it's because they see something. And he's automatically marketable because of who he is.
Of course,
but
just like his daughter was.
Somebody that does not have the talent that's going to, his grandfather's legacy. This guy, I see a promising future for him. And if you haven't had the chance to take a look at his debut, take a look at him. He's up and coming.
I would like to see that, but one of the things Muhammad had that a lot of the fighters don't have today, and the ones that don't make it to the elite level, is they don't have the will to win, no matter what happens. If they get hit a time or two, they give up, or they're defeated. Like if you watch some of the fights that Tyson had, a lot of the guys, like Michael Spinks, if you remember that fight, Michael Spinks lost that fight before he ever got in the ring.
You got that right.
He was scared out of his mind because the intimidation factor. But with Muhammad Ali, he had an unbelievable will to win. And that's what Cuss always taught us. It's like, if you can impose your will on your opponent, then you'll win. Because whoever has the strongest will to win will be the winner of the fight. Because you gotta think at some point the skill set's the same. Like when he was with when the great classic fights with Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, Muhammad was able to impose his will on Joe Frazier. And believe it or not, I watched with Muhammad Ali and his proteges. I watched that first Joe Frazier fight. And he goes, man, he said, I won that fight. He said, he hit me. I went down. But look at the other 12 rounds. I won every single round. But, it was a different time. It was different judging. He just came back, and he was in New York City, and he was doing he wasn't really ready. And I think Joe Frazier actually did win that fight, but he came back and he beat him. And then when I answered the phone when Muhammad Ali called before he went to fight Zaire with George Foreman. So I answered the phone. It's Muhammad Ali. He goes, let me speak to Cuss, because Cuss didn't like anybody on the phone, but it was ringing. So I picked it up, and I said, Custom Auto Residence, and he said, hey, he said, let me talk to, where's Cuss? I got to talk to him. So what he asked Cuss was a great story. He said, I'm afraid of George Foreman, man. He said, well, how am I going to fight this guy? This guy, he's big, he's humongous, he knocks people out with one hand, with one punch. He said, how do I beat a guy like that? So what Cuss told him, and I was standing right there. He said, as soon as the bell rings, run across the ring and hit him as hard as you can with your right hand. Don't wait. And that's exactly what he did. If you go back and watch, he ran across the ring, he hit him hard, and then Cuss said, and don't do that stupid rope-a-dope. He said, why do you let yourself get punched? Don't do that. Don't be somebody's punching bag. But he did it, and he tired him out. And it was a good strategy, obviously. He took some punishment. But I tell you what, any one of us in that 8th round could have knocked George Foreman out. He was out. He punched himself silly. And he won that fight. He won that fight because he was smart. He imposed his will. He talked smack with the best of them, man. In the ring, he come up close. You see him yapping at this guy. He said, you're nothing. He said to Frazier, just an ugly little monkey. You're just an ugly little monkey. I'm going to knock you out. He said, you got nothing. You can't knock me out. You can't even hit me. And I tell you, there was one fight he had with a guy named Cleveland. It was in Houston right before he got his title taken away because of the evasion of the draft. And if you watch that fight with Cleveland Williams, and Cleveland, I mean, he was a good fighter, man. He's a good heavyweight fighter. And wherever he put his hands, Muhammad found an opening and punched him. He went like this, he punched him in the middle. He went like this, he gave him an uppercut. He was all over that guy. And it's one of the best tactical heavyweight fights that you guys could ever see. But it's funny. So for me, I stayed at 160 was really hard for me to get down to, but 168, 165 was good. So I stayed that heavy middleweight weight, through my amateur career. And it's funny, I weighed myself today after working out at 168.
Wow.
And the thing is,
wow.
And the thing about it is the discipline that Cuss taught me. He said, Paul, I'm going to teach you discipline, and just listen up, because this is how easy it is. Whatever you want to do, don't do. Whatever you don't want to do, make yourself do. So Coach Dave, when your kids don't want to do road work, say you got to have discipline. Go do the road work and shut up. Okay, you want to be a champ? Go do the road work. You don't want to go an extra couple of rounds? Then you don't want to be the champ. You don't want to win. And so when you see great champions, they have the will to win, but they also have the discipline. And then, I gave this to you. I wrote this book called Returning to Relevance. The same thing I did, that Cus did to me, I did with a company. Because I was always entrepreneurial. I hate people telling me what to do, except if it was Cus. And I always wanted to, go to the beat of my own drummer. I didn't, and when, I'm 40 years in the restaurant business now. And my uncle, the uncle that was the fighter with Cus, he had an Italian trattoria in New York City. Everybody, right? All Italians had a restaurant or a bar. So even Lulu Constantino was another middleweight. And he was like an uncle of mine, not a blood relation, but he had his own bar on 2nd Avenue in New York City. And so you're around it, and then you see the discipline of taking care of the business, taking care of your people, taking care of your guests, taking care of the food, taking care of service at a very, very high level. And then I tell everybody that we have discipline where there's a mission. There's a mission that you got to know. There's a purpose that we have. And I tell people that if you don't want to learn the purpose and you don't want to learn the mission, that's fine. Get out. Go work at Applebee's. So you don't want to work here because you got to have. It's almost like benign dictatorship, right? You got to be able to follow the rules. You got to be able to follow the rules of the ring. You got to know how to use the ring. You got to have the discipline to keep practicing. We had a bag, another thing that I don't know if you have it, Dave, but it was a bag that Cus had that was filled with beans. Right? And he would have it on a string, and you throw it out. Right? And right before it hits your forehead, you slip. And then when it comes back, you got to slip. And then after you learn how to slip, you throw punches. Back in that combination mentality. And then when it comes back, you throw punches. And then you throw it again. And those are the kinds of things. I mean, you probably have an over and under bag, right? Where the kids hit it and it bounces back. The bean bag is something, be easy for you to add, but you throw it out and you got to learn now to move and time it when it comes back. And that's a whole different art form, but you're also keeping your hands up, your chin down, and throwing your hands in a combination. So your jabs, everything's behind a jab, and then you throw your combinations or you throw your uppercuts and you move your feet so you can spring to the side, spring back, and still have the bag miss as you get better and better and better. So I don't know if you have it. Do you have something like that?
No, we don't. We're gonna implement those with tennis balls, and then we fill up the tennis balls.
Okay.
Yeah, we are just 3 months into this new facility, and we're still building it, so we have quite a bit to go. But believe me, hopefully within a year we'll have every gadget in here that you can imagine.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, if you could bring that back, because Cus filled it with beans because he said, I wanted the kid, whoever it was, if he missed, to feel a little bump on the back of his head, Yeah. So he said, because that will teach you to move. You got to move. You got to always be moving. You got to hit, and you can't always, you can't be there when the guy starts to throw back.
And that's rhythm too.
Yeah. So
Hey, Paul, I was going to ask you, did you fight professionally also, or after the Olympics? What happened?
Well, I trained with Cus for a little bit. I was actually going to keep training and go to the next Olympics.
Okay.
But you know what? I turned 20. We had a big party. Cus had a big party for him because I tell you, he's just the greatest guy ever. And so it was time to make a decision. He said, you can go pro. And he said, and there's going to be guys, there's not a lot of white Italian guys that want to fight anymore. So he said, there are going to be guys that approach you. And I'm sure, Dave, you got this too, right? So you got back in New York, still a lot of mafia back then, a lot of wise guys. So he said, there's going to be guys that approach you and say, look, come with me and I can give you some money, because we didn't have any money. I was a broke kid. And he said, and so I'm going to test your loyalty to me. If you take the deal, then you were never loyal to begin with, because he said, what you do in the end was your intention in the beginning. And I never forgot that. What anybody ever does, to you, was somebody's intent in the beginning. It's never failed to this day. Somebody screws you over, it was an intent in the beginning. Somebody's loyal to you, it was your intent in the beginning. I've never seen that fail. One of the things that Cuss said, and there were guys that approached me, but I said, you know what? I'm Cuss's fighter, and there's nothing you can entice me with. I got girls, I got money. I take you. You ever been in a limousine? I could take you in a limousine. And not just me. They did it to Mike Tyson and all the kids that ever got ready. Ever. If you won a lot of amateur fights, people were always coming around and sniffing around. They wanted to make a quick buck off you. They'll throw you in the ring before you're ready. They'll put you in preliminary bouts before you're ready. You get hurt, and then you're never heard of again. And that's what happened then to a lot of the fighters. And so I wanted to be like Cuss. So what I did, I went back to college. I went to the Naval Academy, and I think I told you a little bit that, again, I loved the academy and the discipline of the academy. I hated that a lot of the guys were cutthroat and there was no esprit de corps. So I got out of there. I served my time, as you know, but I went to train with Cuss, and then I went back to school. I got my undergraduate degree, and then I went on and got my master's degree. But I really wanted to be, in physical ed and be an educator and be a teacher. And then a couple of teachers, when I was in my master's program, said, "You don't want to be a teacher. You want to make money?" I said, "Sure, I want to make money." Good. You don't want to be a teacher. So I went into the business side and went back into the restaurant and hospitality, and I've been here ever since over the last 40 years. So that's my sad saga.
Wow. Hey, Paul, did you ever meet Mike Tyson?
I never met him.
You never met him?
He was, I think he was up there in the 80s, because I think he turned champion in 86, 85. And I left in 73. So there was 10, 12 years where, Cuss still trained a lot of kids. He had, you guys remember a middleweight called Eugene Cyclone Hart? Do you guys remember middleweight? It was around the time of Boogaloo Watts. I don't know if you remember. I'm going way back to, this is the 70s now. I think, Dave, you weren't even born yet. When were you born?
No, I was in 70s. I was 10 years old.
Okay. All right. I for some reason, I'm feeling like a really old man.
No, not at all. Yeah.
So, but anyway, Eugene Hart was one of the pros that was training when I was training. This guy, he had, from his waist up, he was a heavyweight. From his waist down, he had skinny legs. But the guy was built like Hercules. He had a left hook. He was naturally left-handed. And they took him out of southpaw and taught him orthodox. So he had a left hook that shake the foundations of a house. The guy was unbelievable. He had, when we were training, we were sparring. The guy was scared to death to get hit by this guy. So I became his friend very quickly. And he had, at the time, he had 25 fights, 24 knockouts. It was amazing. This guy had a great record. And now his kid, speaking of Muhammad Ali's grandson, his kid is fighting in the middleweight. He's out of Philadelphia. So,
what's
funny.
His name? What's his name? Do you know his name by any chance?
His last name is Hart, Hart.
H-A-R-T. Okay, I'll look him up.
I don't know what his first name is, but he's being coached by Eugene. So, and he was a nice guy, but man, wicked left hook. Oh, and he would just throw. They called him Cyclone because he would come at you, in the first round and throw so many hard punches at you. If you put your hands down for a second, you're knocked out. Well, shit, we were sparring. He broke my nose just sparring. It was amazing. And this guy was a scary dude as a middleweight. I lost contact with him after the years rolled on, but now he's coaching in back in Philly, and his son's doing pretty well. Last time I looked, anyway, he's doing pretty well. But the grandson, I hope he does well. But I tell you, nobody would have the heart of a lion like Muhammad Ali did. Yeah, he's just something else. Just something else.
I agree.
Hey, Paul, one last question on my behalf, and then I think Dave has a couple of questions maybe behind
Sure.
Was Muhammad Ali the same persona, having dinner with him at his house as he was when he was behind a mic? Was he boisterous? Was he amicable? Was he what kind of a person was he behind closed doors?
Yeah, he was the same affable, sweet guy.
Really?
He talked smack. He said this when we were all there. He said, "Look, I got to make money. I got to get the gate up. So I say my shit. I talk my shit, but I only do it. I don't mean half the stuff I say, but people react to it. The press reacts to it, and it builds the gate. Because remember then, you weren't making $10 million a fight at those days.
Yes.
If you made $1 million, it was huge news.
Yeah.
And so Muhammad had a fight, and he had, he went way beyond, when he should have called it quits. He should have never fought Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes, when I was there, was his sparring partner. Back in, again, this is the early 70s, and really? he was just, I think he just came off an amateur, and he was his sparring partner, because he was from Easton, Pennsylvania. We were in Deer Lake, which is only probably an hour away, so he would come and spar. So he idolized Ali, but for him to punish him the way he did in that heavyweight fight is, it's damn sin. It's damn sin what he did to him. But Muhammad Ali was the nicest and most generous guy you could ever want to meet.
Yeah. Yeah. Dave, do you have any questions, Dave?
Well, I do. The question that I have is, being there with Customato, did it seem like you were with a trainer that was way, way, way before his time? And the reason I'm saying this is because you don't see angle fighters, heavyweight angle fighters, or even super middleweight angle fighters. Now, in today's world,
absolutely right.
In today's world, now they are learning that and picking that up. I mean, we're teaching that in our gym with all weights to deliver your combinations and then step to the right or to the left to get out of the way and shoot an angle or what have you. And Customato was doing this back in your days, long before Mike Tyson. So to me, it's almost like seeing somebody out of the future back in the past.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Cuss was ahead of his time in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s. I mean, look at it. José Torres was light heavyweight champion from Puerto Rico. Cool guy, really cool guy. He became the commissioner of New York City, the boxing commissioner there. Floyd Patterson. I mean, you never saw a guy. I mean, again, you got to remember the guy was 170 pounds, and he fought knocked out heavyweights. There's a couple of great fights. Cuss had the old reel-to-reel movies. I think it was 16 millimeter. I mean, it was a huge, and he said, Paul, you got to learn. He called me Paluch. He said, Paluch, you got to learn how to do that projector, because I want to watch the films and you want to watch them too. And I said, okay. So I figured this damn thing out. You got to thread it and needle it and all that. And he had all the heavyweight fights, because, the guy, Jacobs, that was his friend, Jimmy Jacobs, he collected them all, and he actually had a TV show where he had the greatest fights of all time. So we would watch the fights from, you talk about we had Hammering Hank, we had Willie Pett. If you remember some of these guys, we had the Graziano fight with Tony Zale. I mean, there was 3 of those just crazy fights that went back and forth. It was really, really good. But you're right, and it wasn't a step to the left or a step to the right. It was a spring. So to try to teach your kids this, you land on both feet at the same time. So you spring. You're so much faster. And then you always do it behind a jab to the eye. So you actually blind them with the gloves. You blind them and move to the side. Okay? And when you get to the side, your opponent's looking straight. You're to the side. And now the body, the head, everything's right there. You can move to the side. If you watch some of Tyson's knockouts, he would hit the blinder, the jab, the 7, and then he'd give a right hand to the body, and to the liver, and then he moved to the side and come up with an uppercut. Half the fighters never saw him coming, and these were pros. These were championship fights.
Yeah. And
knock him stiff.
Yeah, he'd throw that jab with that left, step over to the right, hammer that hook, and then step over even more to the right and throw the uppercut. Yeah, I studied him very, very well.
Yeah. and each punch was a knockout punch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
very
don't
ugly
forget,
one, Kennedy.
and don't forget, and the guy he was fighting, whoever it was scared out of his mind.
Oh yeah.
so he never knew what hit him. Believe me. And some of those championship fights that Tyson had were just amazing. I got lots. I actually taped him back then. I followed him. They called him Kid Dynamite, and I was so happy. I just wished I could live to see him win the championship. He never did.
Sure.
And I wish that he lived long enough to teach Mike at the time how to be a man outside the ring. And he wouldn't have gotten so much goddamn trouble.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was Cuss was so before his time. The peekaboo style, always having your hands up, always having your chin down, moving side to side, but after a punch. So when you punch and I move to the side, you're punching where I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what opens up the head, the chin. You know, people, he said a lot of guys lead with their chin. And and I loved his phrase for that was, it's like a lantern in a storm. The chin would stick out so much. It looks like a lantern in a storm. How can't you hit it? Because he would lead with the face. And so you just, it's easy to hit. So always tuck your chin in, always move to the side, always have your footwork going. And so he was way before his time. I tell you, there isn't a day that goes by I don't think of him. He has so many great sayings, so many things that, that just embedded in my brain. And I'm telling you, it's what helped me turn that discipline into business that helped me take Bennigan's and make it a global brand and Steak and Ale and the different things that I'm doing now.
Wow, congratulations.
Hey, Paul, will you ever coach? Have you ever thought about coaching in the near future? There's a couple of gyms nearby. As a matter of fact, I was going to tell you in 2 weeks, I'm going to take you one if you're in town in Boca Raton to meet a gentleman that came on our show last week. Okay.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I did that in Dallas when I had my headquarters over there, when I had my office there. I would go down to, I like to go to the projects and, the kids like what you're doing, Jaime. The kids that never get noticed, that if you give them just this much of a chance, they got talent, but nobody ever takes the time to listen to them, to train them. You say, okay, throw a couple of hands at me, and just get them excited that they have potential to do something, or just give them a hobby that's other than running around the streets. So I think what you're doing is great. But yeah, I like the mentorship piece, and I like giving back a little bit, especially all the different things that Cuss taught me. Because it's guys like you, Dave, that if we don't do it, it's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right. Today it's punch. The heavyweight division is punch, get a punch, punch, get a punch. They keep moving back like that train, getting away from that train, like I told you, right? And the guys are just following forward. There's no movement. Once you punch, they just stand there. And that goes to the light heavyweight and even middleweight divisions now. I can't believe how sorry it is from a skill set standpoint.
Oh, yeah. And another thing that we're dealing with too is we're noticing that there's a lot of coaches that want to be more on the limelight than their own fighters. We're old school. We don't want to be seen. We want our kids to be seen. We want our kids to be in the limelight, not us. That's how we become champions as trainers. But nowadays, especially here in Southern California, you have so many trainers that want to be in the front of their own fighters, and it's really causing an issue with a lot of people out here. So that's why you see so many transferring from gym to gym to gym to gym to gym. Because the trainers are also in competition with their own fighters.
Yeah, I could see how that would happen. They want their 15 minutes of fame, and they also trying to make a quick buck off the back of some of these kids.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, Paul, are you going to be in town this Saturday?
I am. Yes.
Well, you know what? Don't make plans. Hopefully Saturday night we'll watch the fight together. There's a world heavyweight championship fight.
Okay.
Wilder versus Fury, and that's what we're going to be talking about right now. Jaime will be talking about it, but we'll watch it together. I'm gonna. It's on pay-per-view. We'll watch it here at my house. This is the only way to get you to my house to watch a fight.
Well, Fury's just a big lummox. I don't know what you guys think of him, but he has a little bit of skill, but he's big when he leans on you and he makes you tired. Yeah. But I tell you what, boxing skill. I tell you what, a George Foreman would have knocked him out inside the first 3 rounds. Any of Mike Tyson. I think Mike Tyson would have knocked this guy out.
Oh, no doubt.
He just beat the shit out of his body. And he'd go down. He'll go down. But yeah, thank you for the invitation. Yeah, I'd love to watch that.
Yeah, if you're available. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jaime, go ahead.
Yeah, my last question was, growing up in that time that you did and spending the time, with Gastamado and Muhammad Ali and all the others that you were surrounded with. When was that time that you really appreciated, like, wow, man, I was with some legends, not just legends, but some of the legends of this sport, and just listening to you today, you have a very unique story. You have a very unique story that you delivered that not just anybody can say that.
No, it's really that's true. But I tell you, I gained appreciation first from my uncle, my father, and I got to tell you what, it was in the street, because this is New York during the '70s. It's the worst time in the world. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but it was absolute chaos. And so if you walk the streets, I mean, I would actually practice my springing on people. I'd be walking down the street on 14th Street where the Gramercy gym is. I come out of practice and I would spring up to somebody and then spring to the side. And they go, what the fuck you doing? And I would just keep practicing. But then there was tough guys right on the street. And so one time, I'm getting to your answer, but I would, one time a guy was talking to my father on the street, and he kept, it was an Italian guy, and he kind of wanted to make a point by putting his fingers in my father's chest. And my father said, hey, don't touch me, okay? Don't poke your fingers in my chest. I don't like it. And so he did it one more time. My father hit him one time with the right hand, knocked him out cold. And not too many people not too many people have a one-punch knockout, but my dad did. And my uncle would throw, I saw him in a couple of street fights, and he'd get inside, because he was a lightweight. He was 135. He would get inside and throw 50 punches before the guy even knew what the hell happened, and then finish it off with a left and right hook, and usually knock the guy down, if not out. But my father is the guy he was my hero right in the beginning. That guy he took no shit from nobody. And he always taught me this. He said, Paul, look, don't start it, okay? Because the bully's the loudmouth. When you know how to fight, keep quiet. And if somebody starts it, you finish it. And that's when, after a while, I really liked it, because I got good at it. Because we would fight in the backyard, we fight in the streets. We'd have gloves on, of course, and fool around. But that's when I said, I want to go to the Olympics. And that's when he said, all right, if you're ready for that, that's when I was introduced to Cus. But yeah, I was amazed by the quality of people. I mean, I met Rocky Graziano. I mean, this guy and these guys were tough bastards. You would have to, they're the kind of guys that, I mean, they're one thing in the ring, but another thing on the street. I mean, if you couldn't knock him out. You knock him down, he'd get right up, and he'd come at you. My father dated Jake LaMotta. You remember Jake LaMotta, right? The Bronx Bull? His sister. And my father was a good-looking guy. I mean, he's a very handsome man. And LaMotta. So Jake LaMotta says to my father, he said, you fuck with my sister. He said, I'll kill you. And can I say that, or am I going to be? You got to edit that out. Yeah. You can bleep me out. He said, don't fool around with my sister. All right, don't be a wise guy. He said, because I'll find you. He said, I'll beat the hell out of you. And so these are things. I mean, these are legends. But to be with Gastamado and to spend every day with him and listen to him talk and coach Muhammad Ali, and me. I mean, I was in rarefied air, but I got to tell you, I never realized how important it is until I got older, and appreciate that I'm sitting with boxing royalty, and I'm just a goofy, belligerent kid, because I did have a chip on my shoulder, and I like getting in the ring, and I like throwing punches, and I like winning my fights, So, but it was purely a joy, and it's one of those things that you remember to your grave.
Wow.
Well, man, we really enjoyed your story. We enjoyed the history, the knowledge, and we just thank you for allowing us to hear it. And I just can't wait to see the response from the people out there And you're right. Some of this younger generation, they don't know who the Jake LaMottas are and all those. But I think if you as a boxer should know your history and should take some of the great art and the styles that these fighters delivered in the ring and implement it to today's time. And you just brought up some great stories, some great fighters, some of the greatest trainers. Man, I enjoyed this conversation, and I hope this ain't the last time we hear from you.
Nah, great. Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure, guys. And good luck. Good luck, Coach. If you never need anything from me, you know how to get a hold of me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And if I'm out your way, I'm going to stop by your gym.
Oh, please do. Please
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, I was
I'd
going
love
to tell
to.
you. I was going to tell you, Paul. You go to Vegas quite often. Next time you're in Vegas, he's only 2.5 hours from Vegas. Maybe you could take a quick trip down there. He'll take you to wine country, get you drunk.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm never bashful about having a glass of wine. Never.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
We have
Thank you,
lots of
guys.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all yours,
All right.
Jaime.
Well, we thank everybody for joining us here with Rolling with the Punches. Please subscribe to our channel, Rolling with the Punches TV. Till next time, a los miramos.
Thank you, Paul. God bless you. Thank you.
My pleasure.